Only 3 in 10 B2B businesses have an actual formalized referral program. As I was preparing for this episode and doing some research, I found this stat and it really just caused me to pause, but I'm not really surprised. Only 3 in 10, 30%. Now, I invite you to sit with that for a moment because if you are a service-based business, you've built your company through relationships, through reputation, through doing an amazing job and allowing that work to speak for itself, then most likely referrals are responsible for the majority of the revenue you've generated. I see it time and time again with the clients that I work with. Referrals are for most service-based businesses the engine. But when you allow that engine to be created without a structure, that becomes a problem. And that problem becomes exposed, especially when economic times are challenging. So, how do you take this amazing resource that you've created and is obviously working based on exceptional work that you're doing and protect it? I'm Dr. Nadia Brown, founder of the Doyen Agency and host of the Sales Culture Unfiltered podcast. And today we're going to talk about the referral trap. So, if you're a service based business owner, referrals are the lifeblood of your business, and you're one of the 70% that don't yet have a system around it. This episode is for you. Tune in. Welcome to Sales Culture Unfiltered, the podcast where we get real about what actually makes or breaks high-performing sales teams. I'm your host, Dr. Nadia Y. Brown, a sales culture and communication architect, and I work with sales leaders to engineer high-impact teams that hit their numbers without burning out or breaking down. On this show, we dive into unfiltered conversations with sales leaders, industry experts, and high-performing teams about what it really takes to drive revenue, retain talent, and build a winning sales culture. If you're tired of surface-level advice and want the strategies, challenges, and hard-won wins that actually matter, you're in the right place. Let's get into it. Today, we're talking about the referral trap, and this one is near and dear to my heart because I've seen this many times through the work that I get to do. And it's a common trap that a number of business owners fall in, especially from my experience, service-based business owners, and especially women founders, service-based business owners. And it's not because referrals are bad. Like, that is not what I'm saying. And, in fact, based on the research, 65% of new business opportunities across B2B industries is through referrals. So they're a very powerful tool. But the challenge is when you take something that is so powerful and you don't have a system for it, it makes it very difficult around forecasting and growth. So when you're looking at your pipeline, if the pipeline primarily lives with certain relationships and certain introductions, and it doesn't have an actual structure to it or a system to it, then it can really be problematic. So a lot of times what I hear, no matter where a business may be, like I have seen businesses grow to millions in annual revenue through referrals, but at some point the business gets to a place where how do we systematize this? How do I begin to forecast and plan to grow my business to impact the forward direction of my business if I don't know where my next referral is coming from, or more importantly, when it is coming? So you find this is important. So again, referrals are a good thing. And a lot of times you see this because of the relationship value. So women founders typically, a lot of times they build these businesses based on these relationships. The challenge is that when you have an actual pipeline strategy, it is something you can measure, it is something you can forecast, it is something that you can influence. You can then plan your business around this. You can make business decisions because you have a way to really, you have the numbers and the data to support that forward movement. However, referrals in their natural state, that's not how they're structured. They're none of that thing. You can't schedule them, you can't predict them, you can't control their quality. There's some things that you can influence, but without the right structure and an actual system, it can feel like you're just trying to build this business blind. You're like, you have your eyes closed and are trying to make these decisions and are trying to do these things, and I have no idea how I'm going to move these things forward because that's a real trap. And I get it. In the beginning, you're just like, yeah, we have the revenue flowing. But at some point, we have to take a moment and pause and stop and take a step back and look at how do we shift this so that I can now build a sales forecast with confidence, because without that, it's very difficult. So your pipeline can feel healthy because you're like, I have these relationships, they feel strong. And again, when they're flowing in, you really sometimes don't even take the time to evaluate the situation. The business can look like it's growing, so that can be deceptive because revenue is going up, everything looks like it's managed. And a lot of times, this hidden issue as it relates to referrals without a system can honestly be invisible. But again, you can't forecast a referral. You don't know how you can really create a true revenue picture without a plan. So, as it stands, with just having referrals and no actual system, it actually begins to erode your confidence. The other thing is, and again, you may be having conversations about this, is what we're actually dealing with right now is genuine global economic uncertainty. I feel like every day there's something different. I'm just like, okay, what next? And so with that, you're seeing market shift, clients are being more cautious, the stress discretionary spending is tightening. You're hearing or seeing for yourself that sales cycles are taking longer. And that has a direct impact on your business. So what do you do when the we're thinking about it conversation stretches out longer than is comfortable for your business? And how do you manage those existing relationships to continue to make sure that your business can function? Like at this point, sometimes it's not even about growth, it's about just functionality. So that means if referrals have always just been your only plan, and again, without a structure, then you're probably feeling some real exposure right now in real time, right? Like it's just the reality of where we are. But this is what I want you to understand. It's not that the business is struggling because necessarily of economy. The economy changes all the time. We've been dealing with a lot of economic uncertainty for many years. But again, when you don't have the structure, this can then be the gap that the market changes or fluctuations begin to reveal what's not happening underneath those referrals. And in my experience and working with mostly women-led businesses, that really does hit different because when your revenue is built through deep trust, relationship first business development, then it can feel like, how do I systematize that? How do I take the essence of me and who I am and build a system around that? Because when you hear that, you're probably thinking, even now, you're like, Nadia, I don't know, because now it feels like I need to become someone who I'm not. Because how do I really take that quality and that essence of how I do things with building relationships? Because, like, how do I then transfer this key knowledge that I have to someone else to really build that deep trust? And because of those relationships, it's exactly why clients continue to refer you or your company, and why your retention is as strong as it is, and why your clients absolutely adore you and they rave about you, because it is deep. It is deep. And I hear this often. The work that I do, not necessarily me, but in terms of the client, right? The work that I do is important, but the relationships are even more important and they run so much deeper. And so now how do I take that and package it or deliver it in such a way that We build a sales infrastructure or a system or a process and all the things around it without stripping out the essence of what made it work in the first place. The deep trust, the relationship first focus, the reason why people really want to do the work that you do. They want to work with you and they want to stay with you because they trust you and they know that they're going to be well taken care of. And that can't be replicated. I shouldn't say it can't be replicated. It can't be replaced by implementing a system that is cold and doesn't have that element of your personality and your values and your essence in it. The other gap that you often see is where the knowledge lies. And this is something I've admitted and I've talked about it even, about my own business is who knows how to do the things that you do when you think about it? Who knows who's maintaining those relationships? Who knows which clients are most likely to refer and why? And at what point in your sales process do you even ask? And who knows who else in the organization knows how those conversations then turn into warm introductions, then turn into signed agreements. And often that information, that knowledge sits in one person's head, maybe two. And often it's sitting in the founder's head or some other person within the organization that has this information and had that knowledge transfer. But often in my experience, it's not documented. It hasn't been transferred to more than maybe one other person. So you have multiple people in the organization that now know how to do the thing that you do. And it's never been built into anything that can run without that one person, whoever that one person may be. And again, that's not a referral system or strategy. That's just a person. And a single person doing all the things is not a system. So, and you may have heard me say this. I share this story often because I feel like it's something that I know I need to hear over and over again. I remember several years ago, I attended a an intensive. I think it was called an intensive. It was an intensive, a boot camp. I don't know. It was in person. I remember I flew to Idaho, and I spent several days there working with other business owners, and just learning around growth strategies, retention strategies, just all the things of keeping the business running, but also just relevant. And it was fabulous. It was amazing. 10 out of 10. It was great. But one of the things that I remember so clearly that I walked away with after attending that intensive, we're going to call it an intensive for the purposes of this podcast, is the host said, and he said it so clearly, and he was just like, one is the scariest number. And at first you're hearing it like, what are you talking about? And then he just talked about the lack of redundancy in the business and the risk that it can provide in your business. It opens you up to big risk when there's just the one. And there's so many scenarios that I have now extrapolated that one comment. Like there are other things that we talked about that weekend, and I'm sure I have a bunch of notes somewhere, but that one thing just stood out to me because of the risk that it implies. And so when the knowledge and the company lies in the mind of one person, it's problematic. And especially when that knowledge is around revenue generation, you may see those gaps also in just client delivery, but we tend to document some of those things a little better than we do when it's something that we just do naturally, especially when it's so deeply impersonal. Again, relationship-based sales, trust, relate the emphasis on relationship. I remember having a couple different podcast interviews some years ago, and the question was, what's the secret around relationship-based sales? And I'm like, relationships? Like, it's one thing to just say it and have it be a cute talking point. It's another thing to mean it and have a focus on relationships and really truly getting to know people and understanding how they function and having a deep understanding of how you can best serve them within your organization. And again, when I look at women business owners, this is typically how businesses are built. But when you get to a certain point and you're like, I need to make some decisions, whether it's growth, I often see this. Growth is definitely one in scale, but sometimes we figure out how to work around it. We are very smart that way. But then when you get to exit, and I'm not going to talk a lot about exit today, but I do want to mention it because I think I'll be remiss, is when you get to that place whether by choice or by force, that you're thinking about an exit, that's really when you start to see all the things that were just dependent upon one person within the organization. And it can be extremely problematic. So, again, when you think about having that knowledge based in only one person or based in only one relationship, then what happens when that person is unavailable? What happens, right? How do we do? The business stalls. At best, the business stalls and can coast along. At worst, is now in deep trouble. So you want to really take a look at how can I put a structure around this business? How can I protect it so that I am not continuing to have this future risk be present in my business because of this particular dependency, right? And I want you to really think about that because, the question is if this person who's the keeper of the knowledge, were to ever take a leave of absence, to not be there for whatever reason, what would happen to the revenue in your business? And you have to be honest about that. And then, okay, now what do we do? How do we take the steps to move forward? So, okay, you're like, okay, Nadia, great. I got it. I got it. I got it. Now, what do I do? And here's what I need you to hear me when I say this. I'm not telling you to abandon referrals. I get it. And I'm not telling you to stop doing what's working. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is let's take what's working and take it to the next level by building an infrastructure under what you've already built that supports it to make it even stronger. So now that knowledge, the information around the process, the key relationships doesn't just live with one person and leaves your business exposed because now you have a way and a system and an infrastructure that supports it. So what does that look like? First, I want you to consider a proactive referral system, not a passive one. Most of us create, and I say us because I'm not coming from a place of I have it all figured out. But again, most of the time, people build businesses or not businesses, referral systems that are passive. We hand off the information to our referral partners, and sometimes they are very organized. We have the deck, the information, whether it's a PDF file, the blurbs, whatever it is that we provide. We create our little kits, and we send them out, our little referral kits, and we send them to our people, and we're like, oh my gosh, we're doing the thing, and they work, but it often is very passive, meaning, do you know who your top 10 referral relationships are? Are you actively nurturing those relationships? Have you created a system and a process that contains those conditions that has the touch points, the number of check-ins, the value delivery, right? That make it natural for someone to think about you. Do you ask them to schedule? Is it proactive or is it passive? Is it one of those things that as you may be offboarding a client and you give them all the information around how they can refer someone, and that's the end of the conversation, right? That is what I'm saying to stop doing. And instead, now that you have such a solid referral strategy in place and you know that getting referrals works, now I want you to take it to that next level. Be specific, be intentional, create a schedule. That makes it proactive and not reactive or passive. The second one is I want you to document, 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 document. And if you've been following me or listening to my podcast for any amount of time, you're probably sick of me hearing me say it, but it's getting the information out of your head or someone's head, right? That is the key piece, and it matters more than we sometimes realize. You won't know what's missing until the last minute. So, again, who are your top relationships? Where did they come from? Who else do they know? What would need to be true for them to introduce you to someone in their network? You won't know the answers to these questions first until you ask, first until you stop and actually take a moment to write these things down. So, again, You can write down who are your top relationships, looking through your data, who refers the most. Are you tracking that? Where did they come from? Who else do they know? Right? Ask. That needs to be intentional and specific. And then it needs to be documented so the team understands who's who and who's on which base, right? Ideally, that lives somewhere in your system and not in Nadia, what I call Nadia's sticky note era. I love sticky notes. The cuter, the better. But that is not helping anyone. And I do mean anyone. And I am still very much a paper girl. Paper, pen. I write a lot of things down. I still have my sticky notes, not as many as I had in the past. But again, that's not helping my team or my business if everything lives here in my mind, in my brain, or in my notebook. So you have to find a way to honor who you are, but then transfer that and create the infrastructure and create the system. So now you have a referral system, a referral structure that is organized. It's not passive. And now it's helping you to be able to build a pipeline where you can actually forecast and your team is clear on what to do and when to keep things going. And then the last one is it needs to be a repeatable path. It doesn't have to be full outbound because I know a lot of people are reluctant to go that way. And a lot of people, and when you've built a business that's really big on referrals or trust and relationships, then certain strategies and sales just don't fit. So I'm not inviting you to implement something in your business that doesn't align with the values of your business. Now, if they do align, great. But if they don't align, then don't. So you have to look at what is going to help support creating a referral strategy or system and putting in the infrastructure without it being out of alignment. So you're like, okay, Nadia, you said a lot of words, but I'm not really sure I understand what you said, what you mean. What I mean is, for some, it can look like speaking. I know a lot of my clients speak. They're out, they're speaking, they're training, they're doing the things. That is how they get into those strategic rooms in order to build the relationships that eventually then lead to new business. It could be leveraging podcasting, which in my mind is very similar to speaking, being a guest podcast, right? It could be looking at your strategic relationships. A lot of people look at that, right? So what I'm looking at telling you is what goes that you can better forecast, that you have a little more control over, that goes along with supporting, again, supporting what you've already built, this path for new referrals, for new relationships, and creating these additional channels. This is what I'm saying. So again, I'm not asking you to become a company that you are not. I'm not asking you to start doing things that are completely out of alignment. But what I am asking you is to build the infrastructure that can securely hold what you've already built. So then it's not just resting all in one person's relationships or one strong year or even one strong referral source, because what happens when that referral source goes quiet? Now we're looking at how do we create a process, a system, or an infrastructure that can make what you've already done that much stronger. And instead of having something that's passive, now we have a real engine, if you will, that we can influence, that we can leverage, and allows us to be able to forecast because we systematized the one thing that has made us so amazing to begin with. I understand how much these relationships mean and the value of trust in these relationships. So again, I'm not asking you to do something that is out of alignment, but I am asking you to take that secret sauce, if you will, and come back and build that infrastructure that supports it. Because I've seen it. I've been in these organizations. I've been in organizations embedded in them for over a decade. So I understand it. Not only in my own business have I seen these mistakes made and made on myself. Been there, done it, have a few t-shirts, but I've been in those rooms. I've been on those calls. I've seen what happens when the referrals slow or stop. And then there's nothing else in the pipeline, and how a founder or business owner starts to feel the stress. The team starts to feel the stress because now what do we do? And when I've worked with leaders and I've helped them to build the very thing that I'm talking to you about today, the one thing they almost always say is, what took us so long? Why did I wait to build this? I wish I had done this sooner, especially before I needed it, if that was the key situation, right? Don't wait until the quarter goes sideways. Don't wait until a key person in your organization decides to leave. Don't wait until after the company has had to shift and all the gaps have been exposed. Don't wait. Don't wait for the market to shift. Don't wait for someone to get sick, for someone maybe in your family. Like, don't wait for these things to happen. Don't wait for you to be burned out. Do it now. Do it while things are humming along. Even if you're like, okay, we're humming along right now, and I may feel a little angst. That's okay. That is okay. Because here's the thing. No matter what's happening in the marketplace, when you have these systems in place, a well-led business will be able to answer for these different things. And then you can address whatever issue may be happening without having to think about, oh, wait, now we have to go and run and build these different pieces in the business. So, how does the revenue continue to move forward no matter what's happening in the market? How does it continue? And how does it continue to move forward in this business without you or a key person in your business having to be in every single conversation or having to wonder when the right referral is going to come in at the right time? So you now have a system that runs because it was built to run. It was designed to run that way to now give you more insight, more control, more comfort. Because when you have answers to some of these questions, it provides peace of mind. And it doesn't mean that you and your team don't have those moments of, oh boy, what do we do now? And how might we shift? And oh, this happened. But now you're not dealing with structural things that should have been addressed a long time ago, because now you know that part is done. We don't have to worry about that. Now let's deal with whatever this is before us so that we can move forward and we're not spending that precious brain energy, time, and resources dealing with structural issues that have now been exposed because we weren't ready. So that is the work to build the infrastructure beneath the referrals. And I need you to understand that if you're in a season right now where things feel uncertain and you're looking at your pipeline and you're like, okay, I don't know what's really solid and what's not, then this is probably that moment. Not because anything is broken, but because you now know exactly what you need to build. So if you're not sure whether your business has a referral trap or you're there, you feel like maybe we have the trap or maybe we have a strategy, then let's have a conversation. Go to thedoyenagency.com, schedule time for us to chat, and we can do a quick mini diagnostic. We'll identify any gaps and I can advise of next steps. I'm also really excited. Oh my gosh, I cannot tell you. I've been like trying to hold this in. Really excited because we are launching our global sales culture pulse survey. Say that 3 times really fast. And in this survey, we are doing, so let me back up. In this survey, what our goal is we are doing a research study. And the research is designed to understand what's happening within different organizations. I know things about where I've sat over the past decade or so, but that's still a very limited experience. So we are launching the survey to get this input from different businesses, different organizations globally, so that we can then see what's really happening behind the scenes. And I'm trying not to say too much because I don't want to bias the data. So I want to tell you about it, and I'm really excited about it, but I'm really being careful with my words because I'm like, Nadia, as a good researcher, you know not to have any bias in the data, to keep it really non-partial. And so that's where I am, like, trying to honor the things that I know when it comes to research. So we will make sure you can find more about this at the link on the screen here. And then we'll also make sure it's in the show notes. So please complete the survey. It takes about 7, 8 minutes, less than 10 minutes to complete, and then share with those in your sphere of influence within your network and invite them to participate. And then our goal is to have the final study ready by the end of 2026. So by December at the latest, depending on if we're really ambitious, which we are, but I also have to, give my team space to do it. So our hard deadline is December, but if we get it done sooner, then we will let you know. So I invite you again at this link to go ahead and complete the survey, share it with your network. And at the end of the survey, once you've completed it, on the thank you page, you will be invited. You'll have the option, it's completely optional, to submit your information, your contact information. If A, you would like to receive the results early, so you want to be on the in crowd, the early crowd. And B, if you are interested in being interviewed to share deeper insights into what it is that we're studying. So if you want us to reach out to you about that, then just let us know. So thank you so much for joining us for another episode of Sales Culture Unfiltered. I'm Dr. Nadia signing off. I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye. That's a wrap on today's episode of Sales Culture Unfiltered. But the conversation doesn't end here. If something sparked your interest today, connect with me on LinkedIn or visit our website at thedoyenagency.com to explore how we're helping sales teams build cultures that last. And if you found this episode valuable, don't keep it to yourself. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a fellow sales leader. See you next time.